Hello and welcome to Empowered to Thrive. I'm your host, Kareen Powell, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. I'm also happy to introduce my guest, Devin Dobran, is here with me as well.
That's Dobran.
And Dobran, okay, good, because I grew up with the last name Guido, and people would call and be like Guido, Guido. And so
That's how I said it in my head.
okay, yes. So I understand wanting it to be as it should be. So um, I am so happy to have you here with me, Devin. And I just want to share with everybody a little bit about who you are. And
Yeah.
Devin and I actually met at a mom support group and found that we had some similar interests and passions. And I'm looking forward to having conversation with you about that. So Devin is the single mom of an amazing 4-year-old. She has a natural ability to connect with others, and she absolutely loves to learn about people and to connect with them. And how beautiful that is.
Thank
So
you.
recently, she's been embarking on her own self-love, self-healing, and self-growth journey, and has become very passionate about this type of work. And so she goes onto social media and just shares from her heart. And that is what we are going to be doing today, giving you a space to share from your heart, to share your journey, your story. And I am looking forward to other people getting to connect with you outside of this space. So thank you, Devin, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I truly feel honored for real. I think I was meant to meet you.
Yeah, I agree. So tell us as much as you feel comfortable with about your own journey that's brought you to this place of accepting yourself and growing to basically like you.
So it's been a wild ride. I think there's so many aspects to it. Reflecting back on, how I was as a child and, things I did and just different interactions I had. And I did a lot of like reading. I read this fantastic book about which basically she talks about taming your dragon. And it has to do with the voices you hear that tell you, you're not enough or you're not a good enough mom or you're not a good enough, partner, anything. And she reframes it to be in a way that gives you power to be like, okay, well, this is my anxiety talking. This is the inner voice in my head. And she made such great statements that I wrote down that stuck with me. I am not the voice in my head. I am more than whatever situation a person may be in. And then I also started doing affirmations, which sounds very silly, and I thought they were too at first when I started. I was like, this is weird. I feel really uncomfortable like saying nice things to myself. But I started doing them with my son, and I found that over time, saying them all the time, I really started to believe them myself. And I think one of the hardest things, and I'm still working on it because healing isn't linear, is that you have to accept even the parts of yourself that you don't like.
Mm,
You have to go into it and be like, okay, these are the parts that I'm not crazy about, but I accept they're parts of me. If there's things that you can work on to to better yourself, then great. And if there's things that are out of your control, you kind of just have to accept that they're part of you and having self-compassion for yourself. I think it's so easy as other people, and you hear this all the time. I've heard it in my research that you you can give compassion to others, but we have so much trouble giving it to ourselves. And I think the first key to all of this is you have to be in the right place to receive it. Because a lot of the stuff that I was finding, I realized that they were things I had heard years ago, but I don't think I was in a place mentally to really receive it. Whereas now I hear it and I'm like, okay, this is what is resonating with me.
mm,
This makes sense now.
mhm,
And just really putting in that work, being kinder to yourself.
mhm. Yes.
And just, I think the biggest thing for me is, especially as a single parent, who has that, you know, dream of having that partner, is saying to myself that at the end of the day, this is who I have. I have me, and I have to love me. If nobody else will, there's no reason why I shouldn't
Mm.
love me, because I'm here. And you know, I just started thinking of how I would want to live the rest of my life, you know? And I think loving, liking yourself is just important. When you put it out into the future so much of, oh my God, if this person doesn't like me, you know, and I do it too. I do it all the time. You have to kind of bring it back into you. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Right. Because when we're looking outside of ourselves to feel that love and that acceptance, it's wonderful to receive it outside of ourselves, but it will never satisfy that ache deep within.
Yes.
We can't sit with ourselves. We can't look at the reflection in the mirror. We can't be comfortable around other people because we aren't comfortable in our own bodies with ourselves.
Yes. And I found something that helps me too is the whole idea of parenting your inner child. So, for example, and it's something I still struggle with. I could look at pictures of myself, and when I would look at pictures of a younger version of myself, I would get this sense of sadness because I knew all of the things that she didn't know yet that she had gone through, or things that she had, you know, like anxiety and OCD and all of that.
Hmm.
And I thought about it and I was like, you know, we love people that are imperfect. So why can't we love ourselves, even though we have these disabilities, for lack of a better word, disorders? And I think that the idea of parenting my own inner child, and when I reframed it in my head, is treating the younger version of me as if she was my daughter, you know, and I kind of like in my head, and I do it now. I'll envision the younger version of me, and I'll talk to myself and be like, okay, we're safe because we have each other. I will take care of you. And I think that that was also a big defining point for me, because I find as a mother, it's so easy to do that with my son, but to do it with myself is harder, you
Hmm.
know? And just having that place of acceptance. There's so much that I feel like I could go on and on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, no, I get it. I get it. 'Cause because you embody it, you've experienced so much through learning to take good care of that little girl you used to be.
Mhm.
It's like there's passion there. Um, and it's reminding me of a conversation I just had with a client yesterday where she was saying how much grace she gives other people. Like, oh, interacting rudely with her, and she says to herself, like, oh, they probably are having a hard day. Like, I don't know what happened to them, this morning. I don't know what went on. But
Yeah.
if she's interacting rudely with someone else, is shaming herself or feeling like she doesn't was expressing how she's not giving herself the same compassion, the same grace. And as I often say, we have to include ourselves in the circle. So we're
Right.
kind to everyone else. We're generous with our thoughts toward everyone else. And yet now we need to include ourselves in that
Yes.
because we deserve as much kindness as we're giving out. And
I
yeah, it's like sometimes people hear the term self-love and they think, oh, that's like wrong. That's selfish. That's, you're self-absorbed. And it's actually the opposite. It's this idea that no, for too long, we've been rejecting ourselves. And
correct.
that pain is, I mean, that pain is crippling us because we received rejection from other people. Maybe our parent figures didn't love us in the way we needed. And now, when is it going to stop? When are we going to look at all that and say, well, there's something I can do about this? Fine.
Yes. And that was a big, I think a big thing for me too, is especially in terms of, you know, like with romantic partners,
Mhm.
um, I felt like always seeking, and it's something I still do, you know, the external validation. And I started to ask myself, when I wasn't getting it, I started to ask myself, what do I need from myself in this moment? And just planting those little seeds of kindness in myself throughout the day, trying to stay, I think, more focused in the current moment, whatever it is that you're doing, I think is super helpful. You know, being somebody that has anxiety like me, I'm always thinking out into the future, you know, go, go. But I think taking the time to kind of be granted grounded as to where you are in this moment, there's a sense of safety in that because when you're focusing on what you're doing in that current moment, you're like, okay, I'm safe. I'm doing X. I could be writing a check or reading a book. Like, what is the problem in that, And
Yeah.
I think that those things are really important. And I looked at it like, who am I living life for? Who has the mic here? At
Mhm.
the end of the day, we are ourselves and we are the ones living our life, no one else. So we should enjoy what we're doing and who we are. And
Yeah.
it just really, that really, I feel like resonated with me.
Hmm. Yeah. So going back to something you started out with, you said you felt silly about it, but you started speaking out these affirmations. You did them with your son. Can you give us an example of like one of those things that you started to say to yourself about yourself?
Sure. So one of the big things I started to say to myself was that I am enough, particularly for me.
Mm.
I think that that's a big one because when you bring it, again, bringing it back home into yourself, saying, I am enough for me. I may not be enough for everybody else, but for me, the life I'm living, for who I am enough for me. And having to, the other one is I started to say, I trust myself. And that one was a
Mm.
huge thing because I realized throughout life, I don't think I ever really fully trusted myself. I always relied on, my mom for and I still do. I'll be honest, I still do. But
Mhm.
my mom for validation or friends or romantic partners, coworkers, and it's something super hard to do is trusting yourself. But I find that when you tell yourself that you will be okay no matter what an outcome of a situation is, that you will find some kind of alternative way. You're not going to die. That there's a sense of calmness that comes with you for that. Knowing that you can trust yourself as an adult to make the decisions and that you need to make in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you know these were the affirmations you needed to hear, that you needed to say?
That those were the ones like specifically for me.
Yeah.
So honestly, I would be reading books and I or listening to podcasts and I would hear these little snippets and I would just write down the lines that resonated with me,
Okay.
that
Yeah.
I really just felt resonated. And then when I started doing it with my son, some of them stuck out to me, the ones I wrote down, and that's how we started. And sometimes we change them up, we'll add in or remove, but
Mhm.
that's really how it started.
Okay. Yeah. And when you say these things out loud,
Mhm.
take us through the progression of like how it felt in your body when you first did it versus after some time and now.
So as I had said earlier, I think healing isn't linear. So that's, I think, one thing to keep in mind is that one day you could feel like it totally resonates and you're grounded, and then another day not so much, that you don't believe it.
Mm.
So in the beginning, it just felt really silly. I was like, I'm saying these things about myself. I'm saying them. I just felt so out of place.
Okay. Yes.
And then I think it just did some kind of switch in my brain where my brain just I felt in my body a calmer sense, a more grounding sense in my gut, just like a warmth and just feeling connected to my inner self. I feel like it really became a spiritual thing. And somehow it kind of rewind my brain to just basically be like, okay, this is what you are now believing. This is what you're now believing.
Okay. And that reminds me of the idea I was thinking before when you were saying, oh, you started to say these things to yourself, they felt silly. If we aren't saying those positive things to ourselves, we are thinking something about ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
It's
And,
like,
and
yeah, go ahead.
yes, I agree with what you're saying. No, continue with what you're saying. I was,
Well, so it feels silly, it feels uncomfortable, out of place, and yet the familiar, like there is another thought there that's familiar. And so if we can just consider what is this familiar thought? Why does this feel so uncomfortable? We may actually come to terms with what we've been believing, what we've been saying about ourselves, what we've been thinking. And
yes.
And so then we get to choose, like, well, do I want to believe that I'm not enough?
Right, right.
Like I'm not worthy? Whatever the thought might be. And we get to choose. Like, okay, I'll feel uncomfortable and stupid and silly saying this, or I'll stay in the familiar. And what is that doing to me? And do I agree with that familiar?
Yes, yes. And I think a big thing is and they kind of go hand in hand is doing that inner work, especially the inner child work. One of the things I learned from some of the research I've done is that unraveling what you're feeling, I think really helps. So by saying out loud or writing down the negative thought, instead of ignoring it, but like allowing yourself to say it, it gives it less power. So if you say you feel you're not worthy of love, you start to unravel it. Okay, well, why don't I feel that way? Where did I learn this behavior? And I think that having that self reflection is such a big component. And I felt like for me, it just opened my eyes to things I never would have thought in regards to my childhood and where I am now. It just really allowed me to connect to the core of me,
Yeah.
and I think working on acceptance is a big thing, a big thing. And that's super hard to do, super hard to do.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of this awakening you had where it revealed about childhood experience or some of the core stuff?
Sure. So I remember specifically, I can't fully remember what we were talking about, but I had this idea from my childhood, and I was thinking to myself, maybe there's a reason why I am the way I am, why I need reassurance. And it's a whole other thing, but knowing your attachment style, I think is also really helpful because again, links to your childhood, what makes you how you are today, the behaviors that you do. And I remember looking back and I was thinking something about my childhood. And I remember asking my mom, and I didn't think she was going to be into it. And I remember asking her, do you think that I am this way because maybe as I was the baby of the family for so long and definitely everybody kind of doted on me and maybe that was where I was seeking that validation and stuff like that. And she agreed with me. And that was a big moment for me because that's not really, I don't find that that's really something that's her stilo is this particular type of stuff to the extent it is mine. So the fact that she agreed with me, I was like,
Hmm.
cool, like it was almost like I'm not making this up, okay? Like I'm putting the pieces together now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that that was a big thing, a big moment for me in terms of awakening. And it's like just throughout the day, these little thoughts will come in my head and I'll be like, oh, well, maybe this is why I am because of XYZ. And what can I do to change that? I think taking the steps to recover from that, especially like an attachment style, because that's also linked into self-love too. A lot of people with particularly an anxious attachment style, they don't feel worthy and they don't feel this. And I've been doing the work to give myself that validation and that security because I really got to a point where I realized that searching outward for it is just so exhausting. It's exhausting. And knowing that you have it right here on tap 24/7 is it's such a beautiful thing. It
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. Right. Especially because we'll always live with ourselves.
right. And that was the point I got to. I was like, I can't keep searching for, in my case, it was a relationship, searching for Mr. Right or hoping to be good. I can't keep focusing so much on the future and am I going to get there? Am I going to find, but like focusing on, okay, where am I in this current moment? What are things I'm doing? What are things I like about myself? And really not just being a bypasser, but like really taking meaning and owning what I'm doing because I think there's a difference between just doing things and you're like, yeah, well, I did this, but really taking stock and being proud in the things you did. Like, yeah, today I exercised, today I went I think that that's you're celebrating yourself.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yes, for sure. We should be able to make a big deal
Right.
out of the things we do, and it not be like, oh, that's piddly, or yeah, it's just sometimes it's how someone else interacted with us, and it's just familiar, so it feels out of place to celebrate. Um, but yeah, you said something, it triggered a thought. When you're talking about like looking for, oh yeah, when looking for Mr. Right, or the version of us at the time that we connect with another person
Hmm.
will attract or repel them. So if you're confident in who you are and you are like, I like me, I don't need you to really like me. Like that's not what's going to define anything here.
Yeah.
You're attracting somebody different than if you come into the dating game insecure, needing that outside validation. Again, external validations, I think it's a human need and there's nothing wrong with it. But we're
Mhm.
talking about, I know when you speak of it, like I get it. It's like, okay, this is deeper. This is like, I need someone else to define who I am because I'm not certain of it. When you become certain of it, it's so nice to hear external validation, but it's not what's making you believe the truth about yourself.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
oh, they actually know me. They see me for who I am instead of
Yes.
they're telling me who I am.
Yes. And that was something I noticed that once I started doing this kind of work on myself, I do feel like when I would get compliments, depending on what it was, it didn't hold as much weight as it used to. And that was a really interesting thing for me, a really interesting thing. And I just started to be kind of okay just being like alone with myself in my zone, like doing my thing. It just made me feel so much more calm and just more at peace with, myself and just focusing on what can you do to better your life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's
Yeah, and it's really hard with I mean I still struggle with it. And I even said to somebody recently, I said to this person, I said, I really feel like I was meant to meet you because at the point where we met, I felt like I was the wheels had been turning and I was starting to really kind of like think about myself and where am I the common denominator here? What are things that I can change and show up differently to make dating, easier, so to speak, on myself. And then I met this person and I feel like it was just that right timing, like we were supposed to meet
yeah,
and he was able to open my mind more to different things. And that's what really kind of he kind of like led me to it, but then I just took off with it and opened the door and just went running with it because that's how
yeah,
I am. I'm really into something. I'm super driven and stuff. So I get what you mean, when you're that version of you is attracting, I guess, essentially what you need at that point in your life.
right. Yes. And somebody, if we're coming into a connection with someone else and we're confident, we're not leaning on them in the same way.
Hmm.
Like it's actually a healthier relationship because
Yeah.
again, interdependence is great. Like we need to depend on people, but that codependency, which I know all too well, is where it's like if I don't have you or someone else, I won't be happy or I won't be able to make it, or you know
Yes. Yes.
that's a
Yes.
whole different type of relationship than two
Yes.
people who aren't going to be so clingy or needy in the every moment.
Yes. And don't get me wrong, I think growth is so scary, but it can be so empowering. So for me, someone who has that anxious attachment, it's very foreign to me to an extent to be like, well, I don't, need like I almost feel like I sound mean. I don't need this person or I can do, and I'm not saying I've never not done my own thing when I've been with somebody,
Yeah.
but there's always that and I still struggle with it But there's always that sense of, well, if I do this and that, that fear of, are they going to leave? If I'm not giving them this amount of attention or whatever, are they going to leave? But one of the things I've been learning is that it's so, especially when you're into somebody, it's so important to focus on the other aspects of your life as well, because then it becomes what you value is what you invest in. And then it becomes when you are just solely focusing on that person, then that person, for whatever reason, exits your life. It's almost like you feel like you're losing your value. You know what I mean? You have to kind of like water your plants all around and maintain
Mhm.
you, because at the end of the day, all you have is you. And it's super scary to think about because, like I said, you think about that person, are they going to leave? I know that feeling all too well, but you have to think of what's best for you, and you are all you have.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I know the contrast of I don't think I can make it without them to, oh, I could do this. It would be very different. It would be harder in some ways, easier
Ah,
in some ways, but I could do it. Like I feel different inside. I don't feel, for me, it often feels like I don't feel like the helpless, scared child anymore. I
yeah.
actually feel like a grown adult versus being a grown adult and actually feeling like a helpless, scared child.
And I definitely have before. I still will revert back
Oh,
into
sure. Me
things
too.
I've done. And I say to myself, okay, well, what version of me, that was a thing that stuck with me, is what version of me is showing up right now? Why do I feel this way right now? What is triggering me to feel this way? And I really think that when you name it to tame it, that was a game changer for me. So if you are saying out loud, well, I'm scared to do this because I'm scared this person will leave or be upset, you're now you're now, like I was saying, kind of releasing the power. You've put it out, you're saying it out loud, you're acknowledging how you feel, and so many people don't. They recognize they feel a type of way, but they don't actually process, hey, I'm scared, I'm feeling this in my
Yeah.
body, I'm
Mhm.
feeling this type of way. And I found that when I started doing that, it made me so much more calm, that I was able to tackle more because I was addressing it head on. I
Mm.
get what you mean about being like that inner child, because
Yep.
you go into this like fight or flight mode. But I think in those moments, to kind of remember you're not that child, and you can, I guess, protect that part of yourself, like by doing the work and unraveling why you feel that way. And so many people don't want to do it because they don't want to face themselves. They don't want to face their demons, or, what
Yeah.
have you.
Yeah. But we have difficulties regardless of if we're facing it or not. I
Hmm.
agree with you. It feels like some people don't want to face it. They're scared of what it will be like. But what we're living with, our inner world without facing it, is shitty. Like
Yeah.
this is the thing. It's like, okay, so to face it is painful, and to not face it
Yes.
is actually painful too. Like that's why we're suppressing. That's why we're numbing out. That's why we have these coping mechanisms that aren't helping us, that are destroying us or our loved ones, or, like
Yeah.
sometimes I just feel like, whoa, like we actually need to come to terms with it's difficult either way, but one way is going to land us somewhere that's lighter and brighter
Exactly.
and easier down the road. And maybe we're going to have, like you said, you're going to feel good. You're going to believe the affirmation some days, and some days you're going to be like, why does that not feel true today? But
Yes.
the days it does feel true, that's still an easier day. That's a
It is.
brighter day.
It absolutely is. I will be sitting in my car when I'm having those moments, and I'm like, God, and that was, I know some people aren't religious, and you don't have to be to embark on this journey. But for me, I felt that connecting with him and saying, like, God, let me continue to feel this way. Just kind of speaking what was on my heart, I think really was it offered me such a sense of peace. But you took the words right out of my mouth. And it's funny because I'm reading this book right now by this fantastic author, and he also has a podcast, Matthew Hussey. And he literally basically said the same thing you just said, that either way is painful, but one is going to propel you forward, whereas the other kind of keeps you in the same sense. You know what I mean?
Yes, you're stuck in whatever patterns that are ruining your life. I mean, just think of addiction, right? It's destroying the relationship somebody has, it's destroying them in different ways. And it's understandable because we want to avoid the pain. And at the same time, we're creating pain.
Yes.
So
Yes. And what you said about coping mechanisms, that's something that I think we've all done that. We've all picked unhealthy coping
totally,
mechanisms.
totally. We level the
Some,
playing field. It's not like one's worse than another, somebody's
yeah.
worse than another. Like, no, it's just some are more overt and we see how they're destroying things.
Yes. And even now there's times like if I've had a bad day and it's so socially acceptable, I'll think, oh, well, maybe I should, have a little, something, whatever. And I'm like,
Yep. Yep.
and I notice now I stop to pause and I'm like, but what are my reasons for doing this? Am I doing this because I'm not feeling good about this situation? Because if that's the case, I don't want that to be the reason that I'm doing this. And I found it was so interesting. I found that when I started doing all of this work, I was becoming happier. I wasn't thinking about it as much. It's not something I wanted to do as much, you know?
Yeah, I do. Yes, totally. That pause and the consideration and the recognition that even if we choose something that later on we're like, I don't know, should I have chosen that? If we do anything mindfully, it's way better off for us. Like, I don't
Yes,
care what the coping mechanism is. If one does it mindfully, it's still better than just doing it
right.
in this way that I'm just numbing out. I'm just
Yeah.
associating. Like that's still worse off.
And it's definitely tough to get in touch with that inner part of yourself to like do that work. But I find, at least, and in my experience, I just feel like I came out like a different person. Like I feel lighter. I just feel more spiritual. I feel like almost very connected to a higher being. And
Mhm.
what's interesting is that people have brought it to my attention that they see it. So I was kind of like, I'm so sorry about that. They have brought it to my attention that they are now seeing it. And that was like so, so wild to me. I've had people say to me, wow, I really love the stuff you're posting. Or someone just said it to me the other night at the mom support group. She came up to me and said something, and I asked her about it after. I was like, what made you say that to me? And she said, she basically was saying she saw the effect and the change in me since and now mind you, this person has only known me 3 months.
Okay.
So the fact that she was able to see that was so, it was so touching. And mindfulness is, again, you have to be in the space in your life to receive this information. I feel
Yeah.
like that's the number one thing, because when you're not, it's going to just go over your head. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah, and it's okay. It's like the things, sometimes we need to hear something 7 times before it lands. So
Yes.
we need this time because we don't know what number this time is, right? So if this is
Right.
number 5 and maybe it's not landing yet, oh, it's still helpful because now you're going to hear it a couple more times somewhere else or maybe here, and it's going to be able to land. Oh,
Yes.
there is no pressure in this. Listening, listening with our hearts open, and then realizing like it's not about the effort. Because, yeah, we both are putting an effort on our healing journeys. But there's a difference between like a forced effort and like a cooperative effort. And
Yeah.
I just feel like, that people will know the difference. It's like this when it's time, I heard something and I'm ready to do something with that. And
Yes.
it actually does feel much easier than the times where we force it and say, I think I should do this. It sounds like I'm being told I should do this. And we grind and we do it. It's not the same. And
Right. I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. You have to be ready for it because some of these things, like when I was, my old therapist, she used to talk about mindfulness and I never really understood it.
Yeah.
I would just kind of sit there and be like, yeah, okay. And then it wasn't until last year that I started to really understand what that meant. And it
Mm.
was like a light bulb. And it was like that moment where I was like, now I get it. Now I get what this means and
Yeah.
how to do this, essentially.
So what does it mean to you now when you practice
So
mindfulness?
when I practice mindfulness, I typically will look at things that I will look at things that I know for certain. So for example, if I'm feeling anxious, I may stop to pause and notice things around me in my surroundings that
Mhm.
I know are definite. So for example, I'm looking at your wall right now. Okay, that's a white wall. That's something I know for certain. That's a gray couch. And I find that it just kind of calms down your nervous system and just kind of like not flatlines it like you're dead, but just flatlines it that you can then come back to the situation. And I also find being mindful, recognizing when you're feeling anxious, how that feels in your body. What does that feel like? Does it feel like a gnawing, you know, sense kind of, does it feel like things are shooting out in your gut? Does it feel a sense of warmth? And getting curious, that really stops the anxious track, unraveling it. Why am I anxious right now? I'm anxious because, okay, of XYZ. It's like the best way I can explain it is by really just processing what you're thinking. Like you may have the thought, but you're not really processing it by putting the full words to it and saying, okay, this is why I'm feeling anxious because of XYZ. And it takes away the power a little bit, you know?
Yes, totally. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. I have thoughts. I just don't know. But I totally agree with you and feel you on what you're saying. It's so different, whatever we do mindfully. Um, and yeah, there's so much good stuff here. I mean, we're jumping around, but yet it's all over this umbrella of our healing journeys. So
Yes.
really,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel quite like jumping around to me because it all feels so interwoven, even though we touched on a lot of different topics, but they're organic to being on the healing journey. Sometimes we're focusing more on mindfulness. Sometimes we're focusing more on the positive affirmations. Sometimes we're noticing and connecting more with the somatic body sensations we're feeling. Sometimes we're choosing to deliberately not interact with someone in a certain way. But these are all a part of our healing.
Right, right. There's so many different aspects. And I always, I would say to like advising people if they want to get into this is listen to podcasts like this, take notes, read, books on this that resonate with you. I found that that was really helpful to me. And,
Hmm.
write down those things that resonate with you and then, repeat them to yourself. Don't just like write them down and kind of forget about, but be mindful that you're writing them down. Being mindful and like having that really resonate with you, what it is that you're trying to connect with.
Yes, yes. So maybe to land us, are there some books, some resources, some individuals that have been super helpful to you on your journey that you would recommend to other people?
Sure. So I love Matthew Hussey. He does a lot of relationship stuff, which is I'm doing a lot of that right now. And that I think connects to your self-confidence, like raising your standards and what you want. He is a great podcast. There's another one, her name is Sabrina Zohar. She's fantastic and she definitely dives into attachment style. There's Dr. Morgan Anderson. I listen to all of their podcasts. Those are really the top three I recommend for sure.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, this has been fun. I'm certain we'll have more to
I
connect and
hope we
talk
do.
about on other episodes because why not?
I
Like,
hope so. I hope you have me back. This was a
yeah,
great
because
time.
yeah, it's easy to talk. When two people are on a similar path, there's just so much in common. So you're talking about things that are very common to me, right? Like just very natural to me.
Yeah,
So it's
that you can
easy.
relate with.
Yeah, it's easy to have conversation. It's it's a treat. So thank you for sharing with us and telling us parts of your process and what's been helpful to you because you've broken it down into really easy bits people can grab. Like, like as I'm always going to say, it's not about grabbing 10 different bits. It's like,
Right.
oh, that one thing she said, you know what? That feels like something I could start right now. That feels like the thing for me. So just anyone listening, you grab that one bit and then put it into practice and see where it takes you. And if people want to connect with you, Devin, what's your favorite like social spot to be on?
Sure, sure. So people can connect with me on TikTok. I do make a lot of videos that talk about this stuff at Devin the Diva, Devin, and then the Diva. People can also connect with me on Instagram. I have my whole username is A Day in the Life of Devin, and my YouTube, which I also post like other stuff, like acting stuff and other creative stuff that I'm into, and that's just Devin Dobran, Devin, and then my last name Dobran, all one word.
Okay. And all this will be in the show notes. So if you're listening and you're like, gosh, I can't write that down right now and I won't remember it, just go to the show notes and click on the links. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
um, I applaud you doing the difficult work and healing yourself and choosing to love yourself because you have a choice. You have a
Yeah.
choice to just
Yeah.
continue and to not make a change and to fall into the trap that I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be too painful. I'm not sure where that path is going to lead me, but you're brave in being willing to follow the path, not knowing. And then you get to experience these moments of life that are so much brighter and so much easier.
For
So
sure. For sure. Thank
cheers,
you. Thank you
cheers to
so much.
you.
Thank you. And to you as well. I really truly felt like it was kismet and we were meant to meet for sure. So I'm really glad that we did this and hope we can do this again for sure.
Yes, definitely. So for everybody listening, I hope you'll join me again next week. And until then, remember that there is a place for you in this world and you matter. And we want you to be here.
Yes. Thank you.